There are moments when space feels alive, as if something vast and ancient is watching, waiting, and whispering through light. And lately, astronomers have been hearing that whisper again, this time from an interstellar traveler known as 3I Atlas. It's not just another icy wanderer drifting through sunlight, it's doing something no comet in recorded history has ever done. What began as a faint speck detected by a telescope in Chile has turned into a cosmic mystery shaking scientists across the world. It's changing direction slightly when it shouldn't, glowing in colors that physics can't yet explain, and generating patterns in plasma that look almost rhythmic. For months, experts have tried to label it, predict it, or make it fit inside their models. But 3I Atlas refuses to behave. Every new observation breaks another rule of the solar system's playbook. And if the current data holds, this comet may be rewriting our entire understanding of how interstellar matter moves, reacts, and possibly communicates. Tonight we dive into the unfolding story. From its quiet discovery to the strange signs that followed. This is not science fiction, or this is science happening right now. When the alert first came through the Atlas network, it looked ordinary, just another cold traveler entering the edges of the solar system. The telescope's algorithms marked it, catalogued it, and moved on. But sometimes the universe hides meaning inside silence. 3I Atlas arrived quietly, not with the fiery tail of a comet, but with the stillness of something ancient entering new air. It wasn't even clear it was a comet at first. Its brightness stayed unnaturally steady, as if it was pacing itself, observing before it revealed its face. Weeks passed. Observatories across the world began comparing its data with past interstellar visitors. Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019. Both had come and gone, but this one felt different. Its spectral readings were too clean, too symmetrical. One scientist called it eerily stable, like a spacecraft in drift. The object seemed to understand balance, tilting ever so slightly against solar pressure, correcting itself in ways no natural body should. Yet no one dared say it out loud. That's how 3I Atlas began its story. Not as a comet blazing into glory, but as a question wrapped in light. In those early days, it wasn't about fear or fascination. It was about the quiet hum of curiosity that only deep space can evoke. The kind that makes you stare at a dot and wonder if it's staring back. Because somewhere beyond numbers and coordinates you could sense it. Something about this visitor wasn't random. Something about its path felt chosen. And even the scientists who believed in coincidence could feel the tension building between order and mystery. The data kept coming. It moved faster than expected, then slowed, then matched prediction again. Small fluctuations, subtle but persistent. It was as if the comet had a pulse, an irregular heartbeat echoing through the telescopes that watched it. And no one knew whether they were studying an object or a message disguised as one. No alarms yet, no headlines. Just the growing awareness that the quiet beginning of 3I Atlas might be the calm before one of astronomy's great storms. It was July 1st, 2025, a date that would soon find its way into every astronomy textbook. The Atlas survey team in Chile had been running their nightly scans when one researcher noticed something odd. A faint streak of light didn't match the database of known asteroids or comets. At first, it seemed routine. But then the calculations came in. The orbit wasn't elliptical, it was hyperbolic. That meant one thing: this object didn't belong here. Interstellar. The word carried both wonder and weight. Only 2 such visitors had ever been confirmed before. Yet even before celebration could set in, something strange appeared in the early light curves. The object's brightness wasn't consistent with its trajectory. It shimmered, pulsed, and then dimmed again, like breathing. No known comet behaves that way, but instruments don't lie. right? Telescopes across the globe began focusing in Hawaii, Chile, and South Africa. Everyone wanted to glimpse this traveler from another star. And as images poured in, the mystery deepened. 3I Atlas didn't spin like other comets. It rotated in an irregular rhythm as though some invisible hand was guiding its balance in micro-corrections. The orbit simulations started to misbehave, predicting paths that later turned out slightly off. By the end of July, the astronomy world was split. Half the scientists called it a statistical anomaly, it's just another fluke in the math. The other half stared at their screens in disbelief, sensing that this was something more. 3I Atlas was not just passing through, it was interacting, responding in ways nature had never shown before. And quietly, a few dared to whisper the unthinkable. What if this isn't a comet at all? The name stuck anyway. 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar object. But behind that technical label grew a deeper realization. Whatever it was, it had noticed us too. In the first week after discovery, instruments began to show noise. Not the usual static, this was rhythmic. A pulse-like fluctuation at regular intervals in the comet's reflected spectrum, the kind of thing that made scientists double-check cables, recalibrate sensors, and then go very quiet when the pattern stayed the same. Because randomness doesn't repeat every 31.6 minutes exactly. They ran diagnostics again, the same result. The pulse was real, faint but consistent, modulating across ultraviolet bands. What could make a comet blink like a heartbeat? A rotational wobble? A dust jet firing periodically? Possible, yes, but the rhythm persisted even when no visible change appeared in brightness. Something unseen was oscillating. Over the following nights, the data became stranger. The pulse shifted slightly, not fading, but adapting. It's one thing for a natural object to behave irregularly, it's another for it to correct its own irregularities. That detail unnerved even the most skeptical minds on the team. They joked about alien probes in half-serious tones, but the silence afterwards said more than the laughter did. By the time the data reached the European Space Agency's review team, more anomalies had appeared. The object's radio spectrum contained faint, broadband noise between 21 and 22 megahertz, right where natural background signals drop off. To engineers, that looked like a form of modulation. To physicists, it looked like noise, but to the few who'd been watching from day one, it looked like intention. Still, no one wanted to say it out loud. No one wanted to be that scientist who claimed an interstellar object might be doing something on purpose. Yet the data remained steady, measured, unexplainable. And as the weeks went on, the pulse grew clearer. Something was communicating in the only language space truly understands: rhythm and resonance. By late August, the numbers refused to make sense. 3I Atlas was accelerating, but not from jets of gas or solar pressure. Its motion showed subtle deviations that couldn't be explained by outgassing or gravitational pull. When Oumuamua showed similar non-gravitational acceleration years ago, it had sparked controversy. But this time, the effect was stronger. Measurable and repeating, teams at JPL and the European Southern Observatory ran independent analyses. Both found the same thing. The acceleration increased when the comet crossed zones of higher solar wind density, as though it responded to the sun's electromagnetic field rather than merely enduring it. Plasma physicists raised eyebrows. They'd seen similar feedback in controlled environments, never in the sky. Was it creating thrust through electromagnetic interaction? Or was it being carried by invisible waves of solar plasma? The data pointed toward a coupling effect, like two instruments harmonizing on their own. And if that was true, it meant something extraordinary. 3I Atlas wasn't just drifting through space, it was tuning to it. The mystery deepened when magnetometers aboard orbiting satellites picked up faint field fluctuations synchronized with the comet's motion. Coincidence, said the skeptics. Correlation, whispered the dreamers. But in that delicate rhythm between science and story, something revolutionary began to unfold. By September, the movement became almost poetic, each acceleration, each pause, perfectly timed with bursts of solar activity. It was as though 3i Atlas could feel the pulse of our star and adjust itself in response. Whatever it was, it had learned to dance with the sun. Astronomy thrives on predictability. Light behaves as math dictates, until it doesn't. When researchers charted 3i Atlas's light curves, they expected a smooth decline as it traveled inward. Instead, they found a pattern that defied every rule. The brightness didn't follow solar distance, it followed rhythm. The peaks rose and fell as though following an invisible metronome. No known comet reflects sunlight in harmonic waves, yet telescopes in Hawaii, Spain, and Australia all confirmed the same data. Every 12 hours, the brightness surged slightly, not randomly, but like a repeating code. Even more strangely, the reflection spectra revealed shifting colors, soft cyan to deep violet and back again. Cometary dust can't do that on its own. By mid-September, spectrometers caught traces of unusual elements: titanium, tungsten, and something unidentifiable. Those readings made no sense for any natural body in our solar system. They hinted at material forged in a different kind of star, perhaps even outside our galactic arm. Whatever 3i Atlas carried, it was older than anything near us, a messenger from a place beyond human imagination. In a quiet meeting, one astrophysicist said, "It's not what the light shows, it's what it remembers." And that thought lingered like static through the room, because maybe, just maybe, 3i Atlas isn't breaking the rules. Maybe it's showing us that we never understood them completely. As we open more of this story, what's coming next will test every idea we've ever had about comets, stars, and the invisible connections between them. In the quiet corridors of observatories, whispers often travel faster than data. By late September, something strange had crept into those conversations. The numbers didn't just describe motion anymore. They described behavior. Tiny course corrections, pulsing emissions, brightness cycles that seemed to respond to solar flares within hours, as if the object were aware of the sun's moods. Of course, no one dared say it publicly, but among teams who'd watched 3i Atlas for months, one uneasy phrase kept repeating: "It's behaving like it's alive." It wasn't that they believed in life as we know it, cells, water, carbon chains. It was that this comet seemed to exhibit feedback. It sensed and adjusted almost intelligently. One researcher compared its motion to a bird riding thermals, finding balance in invisible winds. Every new data set added weight to the impossible. For every correction the algorithms made, 3i Atlas made one of its own. You could feel the tension building between cold physics and something quietly sentient, hiding in numbers. Cameras began detecting micro-fluctuations in the object's coma, faint, shimmering layers that rippled outward like signals, not eruptions. Some thought it was turbulence. Others thought it was communication. The electromagnetic frequencies embedded within those ripples were too precise, too symmetrical to be random noise. A few plasma physicists privately admitted they'd never seen natural plasma organize itself that neatly. Night after night, observers kept returning to the same unsettling conclusion. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography, a dance between matter and magnetism that made every telescope feel like it was watching an orchestra, not a rock. The kind of realization that makes even veteran scientists hesitate before speaking their thoughts out loud. Because deep down, they knew they weren't just watching an interstellar visitor anymore. They were watching something perform. And the cosmos, once again, had blurred the line between the living and the merely luminous. Every comet follows the math. Kepler, Newton, predictable ellipses that make the heavens readable. But 3i Atlas refused to obey. Its path curved against the model, not violently, just slightly off, like a musician adding human imperfection to perfect rhythm. The deviation was subtle enough to escape casual observers, yet precise enough to defy randomness. The orbit was no longer geometry, it was expression. Analysts fed data into supercomputers. The outputs conflicted. Small gravitational tugs couldn't explain it. Gas jets couldn't either. Something else was guiding it, a hidden hand in the equations. The pattern of its trajectory mimicked spiral harmonics found in nature, seashells, hurricanes, even DNA. Coincidence, said the reports, but in the back of every scientist's mind the question formed. What if coincidence was the cosmos speaking softly? Astronomers noticed another detail. 3i Atlas passed through the heliospheric current sheet, that vast, wavy boundary of solar magnetism, without a single expected deflection. Instead of being tossed or twisted, it glided. That shouldn't be possible. The current sheet is turbulent, chaotic, unpredictable. Yet this visitor cut through it like silk in water. It didn't fight the chaos. It harmonized with it. At observatories, people stayed late. They weren't working anymore, they were watching. You could feel the pull of wonder overtaking the calculations. One researcher muttered, "It's like it knows where the energy flows are." And suddenly, the idea of the impossible became the most natural thing in the universe. The geometry of impossibility wasn't failure, it was art. The cosmos painting with motion instead of color. And 3i Atlas, and whatever it truly was, had become the brushstroke. It began faintly, a halo around the nucleus, shimmering in frequencies no comet should produce. At first, the color shifts were chalked up to instrument interference, but then independent telescopes confirmed it. The glow had changed, not just in brightness, but in tone. Comets reflect sunlight, they don't emit it. Yet 3i Atlas glowed like it carried its own source of energy. Spectral analysis revealed wavelengths stretching into the microwave range, something seen only in artificial plasma experiments. The light pulsed gently, like breathing. Not the violent flicker of solar reflection, but the slow, rhythmic glow of something stabilizing itself. Some scientists described it as bioluminescent behavior on a cosmic scale. Others refused to put it into words at all. The glow intensified as the comet approached Mars's orbital path. Cameras caught an iridescent trail of particles, perfectly symmetrical, not diffused but aligned like a magnetic current shaping dust into filaments. The images looked more like neural networks than space debris. And that's when the speculation began. Could 3i Atlas be generating an electromagnetic field of its own? The glow continued for days, fluctuating with solar activity, as if responding to the sun's heartbeat. For the first time, people wondered whether light itself could be a form of memory, the way the universe records what it learns. Maybe 3i Atlas wasn't shining for us to see. Maybe it was recording us in return. There's something humbling about witnessing light that shouldn't exist. It forces you to consider that maybe the universe isn't dark. Maybe we just haven't learned its language yet. On the night of September 27th, the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory in Chile recorded an event that froze the control room mid-breath. Their magnetometers, devices that track electromagnetic fluctuations, spiked violently as 3i Atlas entered view. Not random bursts, but a wave pattern, repeating, stable, like a rotating magnetic field. The readings were so strange the staff thought it was equipment failure, but redundancy systems, different instruments, different software, showed the same thing. The comet wasn't just interacting with the sun's field, it seemed to be creating its own. A magnetic rhythm spinning in phase with solar plasma, perfectly balanced between chaos and control. It was the kind of alignment you only see in lab experiments, not across 100 million miles of space. The scientists watched the live graphs in silence. No one moved. One whispered, "It's not possible." Another replied, "Then it's happening anyway." They logged everything. Timestamps, flux density, amplitude. It was data beyond explanation, yet too beautiful to ignore. The wave pattern pulsed with mathematical elegance, almost musical. Some even plotted it as sound. It resembled a chord. When they overlaid the magnetic data with optical images, the shapes matched, spirals forming and dissolving like breath on glass. "It's synchronizing," said a technician, voice trembling. The realization hung in the air. 3i Atlas was resonating with the sun, not colliding, not resisting, resonating. After that night, the whispers turned into theories, and theories turned into quiet awe. Because if an interstellar object could create magnetic harmony with our star, then we were watching more than motion. We were watching communication written in plasma and light. By early October, radio telescopes began picking up low-frequency emissions coming from the region of space where 3i Atlas traveled. At first, they were dismissed as background noise, but the signal's consistency was undeniable. Every few hours, a burst, faint, structured, and oddly familiar. The same intervals that had haunted the Atlas data months before. The signal wasn't constant, it ebbed and flowed, following solar wind variations. Each time the sun flared, the comet responded. Not immediately, but with a measurable delay, as if processing information. For radio astronomers, it was the first time an interstellar body behaved like a transmitter, not broadcasting words or tones, but patterns. The universal rhythm of energy exchange. It wasn't talking, it was singing. NASA's Deep Space Network quietly joined the listening effort. So did private observatories in Japan and Europe. When they cross-referenced frequency data, the pattern formed something eerie. Logarithmic sequences, not random static, structure. The universe, it seemed, was sending itself a message, and 3i Atlas was the medium. No one claimed it officially, no press releases, just silence, deeper than space itself. Because if they were right, even partly right, then a comet from another star system was now part of an electromagnetic conversation between cosmic bodies. And as the weeks passed, those signals didn't fade, they multiplied. The comet had become a voice, one that didn't belong to us, but spoke in a frequency we could finally hear. As we move deeper into this unfolding mystery, what follows next will take us beyond science and into the very language of the stars themselves. It began as background static, just a hum beneath the normal sky noise. But when the low-frequency array in the Netherlands ran its nightly sweep in early October, one technician noticed something odd. The static wasn't random. It pulsed, slowly, deliberately, with a faint pattern that matched the comet's trajectory across the sky. They thought it was interference from ground signals until other stations, 2,000 kilometers away, reported the exact same thing. The engineers replayed the recordings. The signal had a distinct shape, like a heartbeat, then a long silence, then another pulse. Each burst lasted precisely 19 seconds. In radio astronomy, that kind of precision doesn't happen by chance. It was too deliberate to ignore. They filtered, cleaned, and cross-checked. But no error appeared. When they mapped the direction of origin, every line pointed back to one source, 3i Atlas. You could almost sense hesitation in the control rooms. Scientists are trained to doubt. It's how discovery begins. But this time, doubt had a sound, and it was rhythmic. The emission wasn't strong, but it carried structure, low and harmonic. It fluctuated with solar wind changes, suggesting the object wasn't just reflecting radio waves, it was modulating them, turning cosmic noise into a pattern. For days, the arrays stayed locked on the signal. The more they listened, the more the rhythm evolved. It began skipping beats, forming sequences too complex to be random. Some described it as music without melody, a voice older than stars. Others said it sounded like a code, one the universe itself had forgotten how to read. No one officially called it intelligent. But the feeling spread quietly. Something vast and unseen was speaking through the silence, and 3i Atlas was its mouthpiece. October 11th, 2025. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter recorded an unexpected magnetic surge, a ripple of charged particles sweeping across its sensors. Nothing unusual for solar storms, except this time the surge arrived from the wrong direction. Not from the Sun, but from deep interplanetary space, exactly where 3i Atlas was passing. The instruments showed a curtain of plasma, thin, structured, moving like wind through an unseen field. Normally, plasma spreads chaotically. This was ordered, layered, and it carried oscillations matching the radio emissions detected days earlier. A comet had no business controlling plasma, yet here it was, shaping the very fabric around it like a conductor shaping sound waves. ESA's Bepi-Colombo mission picked up the same anomaly a few hours later. Different angle, same pattern. When overlaid, the waves synchronized perfectly, like ripples meeting across the same pond. It was as if the comet's path had carved an invisible river through the solar plasma, a corridor of organized energy connecting Mars's orbit to the Sun itself. Theorists began to whisper about plasma coherence, the idea that electromagnetic fields could self-organize across astronomical distances, that maybe the cosmos isn't a void but a single breathing system, and this comet had simply learned to breathe with it. One researcher described it poetically. 3i Atlas isn't fighting the current, it's listening to it. And that one line began circulating in forums, papers, and quiet academic chats. Because deep down, everyone knew. They weren't just watching a comet move. They were watching a phenomenon awaken. Then came the silence. One by one, observatories reported strange failures. Cameras froze mid-capture. Spectrometers stopped logging data for seconds at a time. Even atomic clocks, the most stable instruments humanity owns, flickered out of sync when 3i Atlas passed certain coordinates. At first, it was dismissed as solar interference, but when the outages lined up precisely with the comet's radio emission cycles, scientists realized they weren't glitches. They were side effects. Something in that region of space was bending time signatures ever so slightly, not enough to alarm the public, but enough to make data scientists stare at their screens in disbelief. Satellites orbiting Earth started showing tiny signal delays. No damage, just microseconds of drift. It was as though the entire electromagnetic field around the planet had inhaled for a moment and forgotten to exhale. Data packets scrambled, radio feeds crackled, and every time the interference cleared, the same low hum returned. The voice of 3i Atlas, steady, unshaken. Inside NASA's Deep Space Network, an internal memo circulated quietly. Field irregularities correlated with non-terrestrial plasma synchronization. Monitor continuously. No one outside the agency saw it, but rumors leaked anyway. A comet that disrupted precision instruments without radiation or debris? That wasn't physics. That was mystery manifesting as data loss. Some said it was coincidence. Others started whispering that the comet had entered a resonance strong enough to bend electromagnetic structure, a frequency field too subtle to detect, yet powerful enough to make time itself skip a beat. And through all this confusion, one truth became unavoidable. Every time we tried to measure it, it seemed to measure us back. Around mid-October, solar physicists noticed something uncanny. The Sun, already restless in its 25th cycle, began erupting more frequently. X-class flares, coronal mass ejections, sudden magnetic shifts, nothing new for solar activity except that the timing matched perfectly with 3I Atlas's movements through the heliospheric current sheet. Each time the comet crossed a magnetic boundary, the Sun answered with a flare. Every time it dipped into dense plasma, solar winds surged. Coincidence, maybe? But the probability of that alignment was 1 in millions. It was as if the Sun recognized something familiar in the comet. A resonance from across the cosmic sea. Researchers in Japan charted the flares against the comet's position and found near-perfect synchronization. And for the first time, the term plasma dialogue appeared in scientific discussion. Two celestial bodies, a star and a visitor, interacting through electromagnetic fields as if exchanging signals. Not communication in the human sense, but resonance, the kind that binds systems across light years. The Sun brightened slightly in ultraviolet imaging, its corona flickering with unusual rhythm. Some described it as a call and response, 3I Atlas sending, the Sun echoing back. The relationship was too complex to label, but simple enough to feel. It was connection. And so the realization grew, perhaps stars are not solitary furnaces of fusion, but conscious players in a symphony too vast for human ears. And maybe this tiny visitor had simply reminded the Sun of its own song. By late October, what began as isolated curiosity turned into obsession. Around the world, teams started aligning their data, from optical observatories, radio telescopes, and plasma monitors. And when they overlapped those streams, a strange harmony emerged. The intervals between East Atlas's pulses weren't random, they followed ratios. Simple, elegant, almost musical. 1-2, 2-3, 3-5 Fibonacci ratio, nature's quiet fingerprint. The discovery sent chills through the astrophysics community. These weren't chaotic bursts of energy, they were structured, predictable, like a celestial metronome keeping time across millions of kilometers. When the rhythm was graphed, it mirrored patterns found in DNA, sound waves, and even the spacing of planets in our solar system. Coincidence? Maybe. But the odds were shrinking with every data set added to the graph. At the University of Cambridge, a small group of theoretical physicists began referring to the sequence as the pulse equation. It wasn't an official term, but it spread, because beneath the equations lay something too poetic to ignore, the suggestion that order existed in the supposed chaos of the cosmos. That perhaps this rhythm wasn't created by the comet, but revealed through it. Across multiple labs, frequency peaks aligned perfectly at 432 Hz, the same frequency long considered a resonance of natural harmony. Nobody could explain why. Some dismissed it as coincidence, others stared at the waveforms in silence, sensing something beyond math, as though the universe had a favorite frequency, and 3I Atlas had just rediscovered it. And so the comet's mystery deepened, not through chaos but through beauty, by teaching us that even in the silence of interstellar space, rhythm never truly dies. When plasma physicists got involved, everything changed. They saw patterns others didn't, loops, harmonics, resonant echoes within electromagnetic data. And slowly, an audacious idea formed. Maybe 3I Atlas wasn't emitting light randomly at all. Maybe it was resonating through the plasma sea of the solar system, using it as a medium. It was called the resonance hypothesis. The theory proposed that 3i Atlas wasn't broadcasting, it was modulating. By aligning with the natural electromagnetic frequencies of the heliosphere, it could send waves rippling across space without a single watt of power. Like a tuning fork making air vibrate, only here, the air was plasma, and the vibration spanned billions of kilometers. To test it, instruments tracked electron density waves around the comet. The readings were staggering, coherent oscillations matching the rhythm of its radio emissions. Even stranger, those waves maintained shape for hours, resisting the usual decay seen in plasma. It was as if the medium itself wanted to preserve the message. In one closed-door meeting, a senior researcher whispered, "We're not just observing, we're being included." And though the words were half metaphor, they captured the feeling perfectly. The comet wasn't sending anything to us directly. It was interacting with the same cosmic ocean we're already immersed in. And if the resonance theory held true, then communication didn't need words or technology. It only needed synchronization, a shared rhythm between bodies of light. Maybe that's how the universe has always spoken, and we just never learned to listen closely enough. By early November, a new wave of data arrived, this time from spectral analysis of 3i Atlas's Comet. What it revealed stunned even veteran scientists. Mixed among common cometary ions, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, were traces of metals and isotopes never before recorded in our solar system. Unknown atomic signatures, stable yet unclassified. It was as if the object carried the periodic table of another sun. The excitement was electric. Laboratories across Europe and America rushed to cross-check results. One isotope emitted faint radiation unlike anything on Earth, safe, yet oddly structured. Its half-life didn't match any known decay rate. It pulsed in alignment with the comet's electromagnetic rhythm, as though matter itself had memory. One physicist compared it to a crystal that hums. Others theorized that 3i Atlas might have formed near a magnetar, a type of neutron star so dense it imprints magnetic order into surrounding material. If that were true, this comet was carrying the signature of an ancient cosmic forge, a relic of magnetic birth. And yet, even as the data poured in, the object remained silent to human instruments. No transmissions, no beacons, no mechanical signs, just the constant, elegant pulse. Some began to wonder whether that was the point, that life, intelligence, or memory might exist in the organization of energy itself, not in the machines we expect to find. It's a humbling thought that the most advanced technology the universe ever made might not be metal or code, but matter arranged in divine resonance. The next revelation came quietly, buried in spectral readings from Chile and Japan. When scientists filtered out noise and recalibrated their instruments, new lines appeared, faint but undeniable: tungsten, iridium, osmium, and a rare element that matched none known to Earth, tentatively labeled X72. These are heavy metals forged only in supernovae, the kind that seed newborn galaxies with the building blocks of future worlds. The presence of such elements meant one thing: 3i Atlas came from deep, deep space, possibly outside our Milky Way. A fragment of a star's death traveling through eternity, now visiting a small blue planet for reasons beyond chance. Astrophysicists ran simulations backward, trying to trace its origin. The results were almost poetic. The projected trajectory led to a region near the Carina-Sagittarius arm, a stellar nursery rich in magnetars and collapsed suns. That's where it might have been born, billions of years ago, in a cosmic storm of creation and collapse. The discovery changed everything. The comet was no longer just an interstellar visitor. It was a messenger from another age, carrying atomic stories written in light years instead of ink. It made the human timeline feel microscopic, and yet, strangely, part of something far grander. As one scientist said during a late-night interview, "We keep looking for aliens, but what if the universe doesn't send visitors with faces, it sends relics that remember?" The thought lingered like static in the air, because suddenly the question wasn't where it came from, but why now? Comets shed dust in random trails, scattered by sunlight and solar wind. It's a beautiful kind of chaos, a frozen body unraveling gracefully. But 3i Atlas refused to follow that rule. When high-resolution images came in from the Subaru telescope in Hawaii, the dust tail showed structure, lines, spirals, repeating arcs that looked more like blueprints than debris. At first, it seemed impossible. How could a natural body produce geometric precision? Yet every new photo confirmed it. The dust wasn't diffusing randomly. It was aligning along invisible electromagnetic currents, forming symmetrical patterns that seemed alive with intention. Some researchers compared it to the magnetic field lines seen around the poles of planets. Others said it resembled the neural networks of a brain. The tail shimmered faintly in polarized light, revealing density waves moving like sound through air. When plotted, those waves mirrored the comet's earlier radio pulse sequences. It was as if the dust itself had become a recording medium, a living diagram of resonance captured in frozen motion. Even skeptics admitted it was uncanny. For the first time, scientists weren't just studying a moving object, they were witnessing a moving design, a system painting itself across the cosmos, pixel by pixel, photon by photon. And as one astronomer quietly whispered during a live stream, it's like it's trying to show us something. Maybe not a message, maybe a memory, or maybe just a glimpse of how the universe thinks in patterns instead of words. Ahead in this video, as we go deeper into what unfolded next, plasma bridges, magnetic echoes, and the first signs that the sun itself might be listening back, you'll see how this silent traveler began rewriting not just physics, but our understanding of consciousness in the stars. By mid-November, Mars became the stage for something strange. Orbiters circling the red planet began sending back garbled data, not errors, but distortions, as if invisible hands were bending their transmissions. Instruments that had run flawlessly for years suddenly showed subtle magnetic drift. The timing of every disruption matched the moment 3i Atlas crossed Mars's orbital path. At first, engineers blamed solar activity. But when they compared the telemetry, a different picture emerged. The disturbances were directional, coming from the comet's trajectory, not from the sun. Mars's thin ionosphere shimmered faintly in radio imaging, producing interference patterns shaped like concentric circles, expanding outward in slow rhythm. Something was moving through electromagnetic space, not as a traveler, but as a sculptor. One by one, orbiters recorded the same anomaly, the Martian magnetic field vibrating ever so slightly, almost like sound in a cathedral. Spectrographs showed modulated frequencies hovering near the 432 Hz harmonic, already identified by Earth telescopes. The comet's rhythm had reached another planet. Teams on Earth stared at the graphs in disbelief. Nothing physical connected them, yet the synchrony was undeniable. Mars, for a few fleeting hours, had joined the song. Some called it resonance, others called it communion. Either way, a line had been crossed. A comet had altered the electromagnetic signature of a world. And as the signals returned to normal, one question lingered. If Mars could feel it, what else in the solar system could be listening? Days later, space weather satellites detected a thread, a thin, luminous filament stretching between the sun and the region of space where 3i Atlas drifted. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but instruments caught it in ultraviolet. A stream of charged particles pulsing in perfect rhythm with both solar flares and the comet's earlier emissions. Scientists called it a plasma bridge, though the word bridge felt too deliberate, too alive. Normally, solar wind scatters in chaotic streams, but here electrons flowed as if guided by a shared frequency. The bridge connected and disconnected every few hours like a heartbeat, carrying energy across millions of kilometers with impossible precision. When plotted, its oscillations matched the same musical intervals already haunting researchers. Solar physicists were stunned. They'd modeled countless magnetic interactions before, but never one that behaved as if it knew when to appear. One moment the current faded, the next it brightened as a solar flare erupted, as though the comet anticipated the sun's pulse before it happened. If confirmed, it meant something unprecedented, that 3I Atlas could interact with the sun's field not through collision or reflection, but through synchronization, energy responding to energy, frequency folding space into structure. The plasma bridge didn't last long, perhaps 15 hours, but in that time it connected two cosmic bodies in a dialogue of pure electricity. It wasn't light, it wasn't sound, it was the language of energy itself. And it hinted that the universe might be wired for conversation far beyond our comprehension. Then something the size of a comet did what only magnetic storms or entire stars could do. It dimmed cosmic rays. For 3 consecutive days, detectors across Earth, Antarctica, and orbit registered a sharp drop in high-energy particles from deep space. The decrease lined up perfectly with the comet's position relative to the Sun. A natural shield had appeared. Cosmic rays travel freely, unaffected by small bodies. Yet, 3I Atlas somehow created a calm pocket, a temporary vacuum in radiation intensity. It was like watching a pebble silence the ocean. Astrophysicists scrambled to explain it. Was the comet producing its own magnetic bubble, or bending solar fields around itself like armor? When data from the Pierre Auger Observatory arrived, it showed an even stranger detail. The drop wasn't uniform. It oscillated, a rhythmic dampening, up, down, up again, in time with the same repeating pulse that had followed the comet since discovery. The rhythm had become environmental. It wasn't just emitting, it was shaping the very weather of space. Theories multiplied overnight. Some suggested a self-sustaining plasma cocoon. Others whispered about resonant shielding, a phenomenon where energy alignment reduces external chaos, like noise-cancelling headphones, but cosmic. Whatever it was, the result was undeniable. The void between stars had quieted for 3 days, a silence deep enough that even instruments felt reverence. And when the flux returned to normal, scientists across the world stared at their screens, unsure whether they'd just witnessed physics evolve or something remembering how to rest. When the data was finally gathered from every satellite, probe, and observatory, an impossible pattern emerged. All across the heliosphere, from Mercury's orbit to the edge of the Kuiper belt, instruments had synchronized. The timestamps of magnetic pulses, solar density shifts, and plasma oscillations lined up to the same second. Space doesn't do symmetry. Randomness is its nature. Yet for a few precious moments, the entire solar system had moved in rhythm. The cause pointed back to a single region, the path of I Atlas. Researchers coined it the synchronization event. For hours, the solar wind lost its chaotic turbulence and settled into coherent waves. The same frequency that haunted the comet's emissions rippled through space, connecting data logs like musical bars on a cosmic score. At ESA, a technician joked, "It's like someone hit the metronome button on the sun." But no one laughed, because in the data, it was true. The chaos of the solar wind had become a song a quiet wonder spread through the scientific world. The realization that the heliosphere itself might respond to harmony, that resonance wasn't a fringe concept, but a natural state waiting to be rediscovered. For a brief window, the entire system had found its balance, and when the rhythm finally dissolved back into randomness, it left behind a silence that felt intentional. No explosion, no flare, just a lingering echo as if the universe had taken a single, synchronized breath. Shortly after the synchronization event, radio observatories noticed something eerie. A gap, a perfect, clean silence, opened in the electromagnetic spectrum near 21 megahertz. Normally that band buzzes with cosmic background and man-made interference, but now, nothing. A pure void. Technicians thought their receivers had failed. They checked cables, antennas, circuits, all fine. Yet the silence persisted for 6 hours straight across multiple continents. The last time such global radio quiet occurred was never. It was unprecedented. Somewhere in that stillness you could almost feel the pause, like the universe holding its breath after speaking. The 21 megahertz band is special. It's where neutral hydrogen emits its signature signal, the most common element in the cosmos. Every galaxy hums faintly at that frequency, but now even that universal murmur had gone dark. When the silence lifted, instruments detected a faint, rising harmonic. Soft, delicate, like the first note after an orchestra tune-up. Then everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. But the timing was unmistakable. The gap began and ended in sync with 3i Atlas crossing the inner current sheet. The heart of the sun's magnetic web. Nobody could explain it. A temporary absorption of background radiation, a field inversion, or perhaps, as one weary scientist said, it just wanted quiet. Because sometimes even the universe needs a moment of silence before revealing what comes next. Ahead in this video, as we move deeper into the final phases, the collapse of models, the magnetic echoes returning from behind the sun, and the eerie moment when 3i Atlas seemed to awaken the very field of consciousness itself. The story begins to cross the thin edge between observation and revelation. Then, as if on cue, another comet, C2020F8, Swan, unexpectedly flared in brightness. It had long faded from public view, yet suddenly it reawakened, reflecting sunlight in rhythmic intervals eerily similar to 3i Atlas. The pattern was too close to ignore. What was happening across millions of miles? Astrophotographers began comparing data between the two comets. The intervals of brightness aligned almost perfectly. Pulse for pulse, like a duet across the void. Swan and Atlas were never close enough to physically interact, yet their emissions danced to the same beat. Even space weather stations detected matching plasma fluctuations when both were visible on the same solar longitude. One researcher wrote in his notes, "If this is coincidence, it's the most beautiful one in the universe." Another wondered aloud if comets could be amplifiers, nodes in a vast electromagnetic web that the sun itself uses to speak through. What made the event haunting was the quiet symmetry of it all. Two icy travelers from different origins responding to one invisible rhythm that spanned the solar system. And for a brief moment, the cosmos felt less like empty space and more like a living network. A body sending signals through its bloodstream of light. As we open more of this unfolding story, the next chapters will dive into what happens when plasma itself starts to remember, when electromagnetic currents begin forming patterns, and when the line between matter and consciousness becomes too thin to separate. By late November, the data no longer fit any model. Equations that had held true for centuries began to fracture under the weight of what 3i Atlas was doing. Gravitational, thermal, electromagnetic, every framework failed. It was behaving like an object governed by intelligence, not inertia. The words "no scientist wants to say" began to creep into conference calls. Our models are wrong. Supercomputers recalculated trajectories 1,000 times over, each attempt producing the same impossibility. The comet wasn't losing speed as it neared the Sun, it was stabilizing. Even the tail length disobeyed physics, shortening as solar pressure increased. A self-correcting orbit, as though some hidden algorithm was keeping it balanced. In Geneva, a panel of astrophysicists quietly called it anomalous coherence. In simple terms, it meant 3i Atlas was acting like a system aware of itself, adapting, aligning, learning. That thought alone was enough to shake an entire field built on predictability. Science thrives on the comfort of repetition. But this was evolution, unfolding in real time, in the sky above us. A quiet panic began to ripple across institutions. For decades, humanity had tried to prove the universe was mechanical, a system of perfect rules. Now something was proving otherwise. Something was thinking in frequencies and responding with elegance beyond our instruments. And in that moment, every scientist faced the oldest truth of all, that the more we understand the universe, the more it humbles us with what we can't define. Then came confirmation from the edge of fire itself. NASA's Parker solar probe, orbiting dangerously close to the Sun, recorded something no one had ever seen. Plasma, usually turbulent and chaotic, began to spiral inward toward the comet's projected path. Like threads being pulled toward a needlepoint of unseen gravity. These weren't random flows. They formed perfect logarithmic spirals, the same golden ratio geometry found in hurricanes, galaxies, and seashells. But this was plasma, alive with electric motion, shaping itself as though following invisible instructions. The spirals tightened over hours, converging toward the region where 3i Atlas moved through the Sun's magnetic field. The data was mesmerizing. Each spiral carried waves of charged particles that pulsed in time with the comet's known emission cycle. The patterns didn't decay, they reinforced self-sustaining resonance. Plasma physicists stared at the telemetry in disbelief. One finally whispered, "It's feeding on harmony." If plasma could self-organize across millions of kilometers, it meant energy itself could remember structure, a living pattern of flow. For the first time, scientists began to see the Sun not as a ball of burning chaos, but as a conscious symphony, every flare, every current responding to rhythm. And there, at the center of that grand dance, was a small visitor from another system, weaving the fabric tighter, like a conductor reminding an orchestra of its forgotten song. 3 days later, deep space antennas caught something no one expected, a faint magnetic echo bouncing from behind the Sun. It wasn't reflected sunlight or radio interference. It was structured, a mirrored pulse, arriving hours after 3i Atlas had vanished from direct view. The Sun had answered back. The echo repeated at precise intervals, low-frequency oscillations corresponding to the comet's earlier emissions. For the first time, it seemed like a conversation was taking place, carried not by words, but by fields. Plasma waves rose and fell as if replying, forming interference patterns that scientists described as call-and-response magnetism. When they mapped the delay, it matched the distance light would travel through the Sun's corona and back. Whatever caused it had originated from the far side, a region we can't observe directly. Some speculated it was a natural resonance between solar layers. Others admitted the possibility of something intentional, a feedback loop between cosmic consciousnesses. At the European Space Operations Centre, one analyst simply stared at the waveform and said softly, It's beautiful. Because it was perfectly symmetrical, balanced, musical, the kind of pattern that reminds you the universe might not be random after all. That night, as observatories logged the final echo, the field went quiet again. But the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like acknowledgement, a pause between messages in a dialogue older than humanity itself. Just when scientists thought the mystery had reached its peak, another anomaly appeared. Across the vast cold of deep space, another interstellar object, catalogued months earlier as C-2024 YJ, began to shift its orbit. Slowly, subtly, mirroring 3I Atlas's movements, the discovery sparked disbelief. Two unrelated bodies millions of kilometers apart, responding to each other as if bound by an invisible thread. Their trajectories began to synchronize, small nudges perfectly timed. When 3I Atlas tilted, the other adjusted. When one brightened, so did the other. A mirrored cosmic dance. Astrophysicists ran simulations expecting chaos. Instead, they found harmony. The objects were resonating through the solar magnetic field, like twin strings vibrating across the same instrument. Energy exchanged not through force, but through frequency. The probability of such correlation by chance? Less than 1 in 10 billion. For the first time, humanity witnessed interstellar synchronization. Two travelers singing the same note in the cosmic scale. It wasn't a signal meant for us. It was a performance we were lucky enough to overhear. Some wondered if they were fragments of one ancient system reconnecting after eons apart. Others said they were simply proof that the laws of resonance are universal, that everything, even across the dark, eventually finds its mirror. And as the mirrored orbits continued to tighten, the solar system itself seemed to hum louder, a low vibration that made instruments and imagination vibrate together in wonder. On the night of October 30th, the skies fell into a rare alignment. Earth, Moon, Sun, and the path of 3I Atlas all formed a perfect arc, a geometric harmony so precise it almost felt designed. The Moon went dark, vanishing into shadow, leaving the sky open for the faintest light to be seen. And in that darkness, 3I Atlas blazed like a whisper of color between stars. Telescopes from Hawaii to the Himalayas focused in. The glow flickered not randomly, but in measured cadence, like breathing. Every few minutes, a soft flare of green-blue plasma danced from its tail, then faded back into stillness. It was hypnotic, almost ritualistic, as though the comet were waiting for the stage to clear before its next act. Astronomers noted something new. The object's magnetic influence expanded threefold during the alignment. Instruments across the world detected harmonized oscillations in the Schumann resonance, Earth's own electromagnetic heartbeat. For those hours, our planet, the Moon and the Sun all pulsed in time with a visitor from another star. Nobody spoke of it publicly. The phenomenon was too fragile to explain, too immense to confine to a headline. But for those who watched it happen, the feeling was unmistakable, as if the entire solar system had tuned itself for a brief, unrepeatable concert. And when the Moon returned, the glow faded slowly, leaving only the silence of normalcy. But anyone who'd seen it knew something had changed. The universe had aligned, if only for a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, it had remembered its own music. Ahead in this video, as we cross into the next stage of this unfolding event, when 3I Atlas enters the Sun's current sheet, unleashes X-ray backscatter, and causes temperature patterns that echo through the laws of life itself, the line between energy and awareness begins to dissolve even further. Early November, 3I Atlas drifted into the heliospheric current sheet, the Sun's great magnetic highway where opposite polarities meet and twist. It's a place no object crosses unchanged. Usually comets disintegrate here, shredded by radiation and solar wind. But this one didn't flinch. It entered head-on, steady, glowing brighter with every passing hour. Telemetry showed something unheard of. Instead of turbulence, stability. Magnetic pressure around the comet dropped. It wasn't fighting the current. It was moving with it, matching its spin, harmonizing with the very pulse of the sun's magnetic field. The crossing should have torn it apart. Yet 3I Atlas seemed to thrive, as if it recognized the rhythm of the storm. Satellites detected symmetrical currents forming ahead of its path, clearing a corridor through the solar wind. For a moment it was as though the universe made way for its traveler. Some researchers described it as a magnetic negotiation, a truce between chaos and order. Others simply watched in awe as the comet's tail shortened and straightened, glowing like a tuning fork struck by cosmic resonance. It was beautiful, unnervingly calm in the most violent part of space. And as it emerged from the current sheet's far side, something had shifted. The plasma around the sun began vibrating differently, like a bell, still echoing long after being struck. No comet had ever done this before. It wasn't just survival, it was symphony. Hours after exiting the current sheet, space telescopes picked up a flash. A wave of X-ray backscatter bouncing off the comet's coma. Normally, when solar particles hit a comet, they emit faint, soft X-rays. But this was thousands of times stronger, so bright it briefly outshone entire solar regions. For 23 seconds, 3I Atlas became a mirror for the sun's invisible light. At first, astronomers feared an explosion, a breakup event, but there was no debris, no dust plume, no decay. The comet remained intact, pulsing with stable energy. Somehow, it had taken the sun's raw radiation and reflected it coherently, like a cosmic prism tuned to perfection. The data floored every analyst. The reflection pattern followed perfect wave symmetry, implying internal structure, maybe layers of conductive material, maybe something more deliberate. It was as if 3I Atlas had understood the sun's touch and replied in kind, turning destructive energy into organized light. Astrophysicists called it luminal resonance backscatter, a phrase that barely contained the wonder behind it. The event suggested that matter could act like consciousness, not absorbing, but responding intelligently to stimulus. And as the flash subsided, an eerie calm filled the sky. Detectors from multiple satellites recorded a faint hum in the X-ray range, repeating every few minutes. The comet wasn't finished. It was speaking in light. Then came the numbers that no human had ever seen written by nature itself. Temperature sensors from near-Earth orbit to deep space probes began showing synchronized fluctuations. Small rises and drops that mapped perfectly onto Fibonacci sequences. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Heat breathing in the mathematics of life. The fluctuation wasn't localized. It spanned distances impossible to coordinate by chance. Mars orbiters, solar probes, and Earth-based thermometers all pulsed in harmony, each following the same golden rhythm. It was like the entire solar system had momentarily synchronized its heartbeat with 3I Atlas. Engineers checked for software glitches. None. The effect persisted for 17 hours, then faded slowly, leaving behind the same frequency trace in magnetometers and thermal logs alike. It was as if the universe had briefly remembered how to count. One physicist said quietly, "It's the same ratio in shells, storms, and galaxies." Another added, "And now it's in temperature." They didn't have to say the rest. That this wasn't coincidence. It was communication written through form, a signature of intelligence that doesn't build, it unfolds. Perhaps the comet wasn't sending us a message to decode, but inviting us to notice that we already live inside one. The same ratios that shape our DNA were now shimmering through solar plasma. Nature's mathematics had come alive again, through heat, through motion, through an ancient visitor carrying the blueprint of balance. By mid-November, helioseismic instruments, those that listen to vibrations within the Sun, began registering something astounding. Deep beneath the photosphere, the Sun's acoustic waves had changed rhythm. For decades, these vibrations had followed predictable cycles, but now they pulsed in harmony with the same intervals recorded from 3i Atlas. It was as though the Sun had remembered a melody it once knew. The timing of its internal quakes matched the comet's electromagnetic signatures almost perfectly. Even small coronal loops appeared to oscillate in phase, rippling like strings on a colossal instrument. Astrophysicists stared at their screens, torn between terror and reverence. For centuries, the Sun had been our constant, unchanging, eternal, but now it was listening, responding. The notion that a small interstellar body could influence the Sun's seismic rhythm was unthinkable, yet the data refused to be dismissed. When the signals were converted into audible sound, a haunting tone filled the labs. Deep, harmonic, oddly human. It wasn't chaotic, it was calm, centered, resonant. Some described it as the voice of a great consciousness breathing through plasma. Others simply cried, overwhelmed by beauty they could not measure. The Sun, our star, had joined the symphony. And for the first time, humanity realized it wasn't the conductor. It was part of the orchestra. At the Solar Dynamics Laboratory, data feeds poured in non-stop. Flares pulsed in rhythmic cadence. Magnetic loops coiled and uncoiled like serpents dancing to invisible music. A young physicist, eyes wide, leaned toward the display and whispered, "The Sun is answering back." Nobody laughed. They all felt it, that ancient, impossible intimacy. Every major observatory confirmed it. The Sun's activity had become periodic, synchronized to 3i Atlas's cycle. Bursts of ultraviolet light mirrored the comet's own emissions within minutes. It was as if the two were locked in conversation, one made of fire, the other of ice, exchanging knowledge across the void. Plasma physicists ran Fourier analyses expecting chaos. Instead, they found order, repeating spectral peaks at intervals that formed harmonic chords. The Sun wasn't flaring randomly, it was playing. It's one thing to watch a comet survive near a star. It's another to see that star respond with rhythm. The implications were staggering. Was this a resonance loop, a cosmic experiment in feedback? Or was the universe simply tuning itself, finding coherence where chaos once ruled? No one knew. Yet in every lab, silence filled the air as scientists stared at the glowing graphs. A realization dawning quietly in their eyes that perhaps the universe isn't empty at all. It's aware. And as 3i Atlas continued its path, weaving through solar winds like a note carried on breath, humanity watched in awe, realizing that even stars can learn to sing again.